Hello,
Hello, my
I
friend.
am, thank you. I am Dr. PPP. I am the celebrity guru, award winning author of the book You Are the Celebrity. I am the marathon man who ran 11 marathons in my lifetime by God's grace and your blessings.
Hmm.
First two marathons in 1 week, sixth and seventh marathons in 1 week, 10th and 11th marathons in 1 week by God's grace and your blessings. I am the Himalayas Guru who is climbing the Everest, the Himalayas by God's grace and your blessings. If
Hmm.
the celebrity Guru can write, so can you. If the marathon man can run, so can you. If the Himalayas Guru can climb, so can you. Life is the movie, you are the celebrity. Life
Hmm.
is a celebration, you are the celebrity. Life is a marathon, you are the marathoner. Life is the book, you are the author. Life is the mountain, you are the mountaineer. I am the Guinness World Records #1 international bestseller of the book Magnetic Entrepreneur,
Hmm.
world renowned. I served in the Canadian Army. Thank you, Pastor. I served in the Canadian Army as the engineer by God's grace and your blessings.
Hmm.
I'm honored, privileged, humbled, blessed, and super excited to introduce you on the Celebrity TV's You Are the Celebrity show, none other than Dr. Jeffrey R. Burns. Dr. Jeffrey is the author, Dr. Jeffrey is the pastor, Dr. Jeffrey is the speaker, Dr. Jeffrey is the spiritual pastor who is connecting especially Islam and Christianity. So without further ado, help me welcome with your lots of hearts, wows, like and sharing and your questions, none other than Dr. Jeffrey.
Well, brother, it is an honor to be with you here today. I've been looking forward to it so much. And my name is Jeff Burns. I have an earned doctorate. I was a minister for 18 years. And for the last 16 years, I've been I call myself a full time peacemaker in the way of Jesus. So I follow the golden rule, the Sermon on the Mount, and the great commandment, which is to love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, and to treat other people the way you want to be treated. And if you do happen to find an enemy along the way, do everything within your power to make friends with them. So that's where I live. I live in the teachings of Jesus and as a peacemaker. And I believe that love is the most powerful force in the universe. And so I have spent my last 16 years bringing Muslims and Christians together in friendship, bringing mosques and churches together to do projects together. Now I have a YouTube channel with about 3,000 subscribers, and most of them are Muslims. I'll be started launching a blog with Pathos, which is in the a big blogging organization, and I've written a small ebook called The Peace Path that you can download from my YouTube channel or my I Follow the Path Facebook page. It's free. It's a 60-page model of what I created over the last 16 years, and Muslims and Christians around the world are using it. And so I am deeply honored to be here today with you, brother.
Wow, 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 wow. What's your story? And introduce yourself. You already introduced yourself. And what's your story?
Yes. Well, I had a spirit. We know what we were going to talk about. We were talking about spiritual awakenings. I believe that spiritual awakenings are happening to most people, but a lot of them don't have not the ongoing God consciousness of what is happening. And sometimes they receive it, sometimes they don't. But there's sometimes they're gradual, and sometimes they're sudden. And I had a spiritual awakening in 2005. I was a Christian minister that I'm ashamed to say it now, but at that time I hated Muslims. I would have never used the phrase "I hate Muslims" because I'm a Christian. We're not supposed to hate, but our attitudes and beliefs. I believe they were all terrorists. I believe they were all, I had that dark. I call that my shadow self. Coming from the shadow self. And spiritual awakening is to lead us to our true selves, you know, the God consciousness. And so I resigned from being a pastor after 18 years. And then I decided I don't know what to do. What's the next step? So I was certified as a life and relationship coach. And then one day I got a call, no, an email from someone in the December of 2004. And they said, Jeff, this is 3 years after 9/11, 3 years, you know, after the towers came down. And so as a nation, we were very raw from that. And they said, we'd like for you to attend a 3-month class on Islam. It was at a church in Cary, North Carolina. And it said, we're going to bring imams in. We're going to bring, you know, Christian. We're going to bring all kinds. And we have you know, we want you to do a lot of readings. And I'm like, I said, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I said, it'll be a cold day in the lower world before I spend 3 months learning about Islam. I know all I want. I was looking at them through my shadow self, my pain, and I got them all figured out, you know. And they kept asking me to come, and I said, no, I'm not available. And they said, you must come. You've been an influential leader in this community, and it will set an example for others. So finally, one day, my wife said, I think you need to take that class. And I said, what? She said, you fought the racial battle in the South, North Carolina. You fought the racial battle in the churches so people of color could worship together. And found out later, one of my churches, my leadership that was really persecuting me, half of them had been in the Ku Klux Klan at one time. You know, the Ku Klux Klan, you heard of that term? They're a KKK. They were a group of they hated black people and they'd wear the white hoods and and I realized some of my leaders had been in that group. So it was a very difficult time for me, but I stood my ground and stood by, you know, I said, all people of color are welcome into our church. And my wife said, you know, when it comes to people of color, you have really fought to make space, you know what I mean, to make inclusiveness happen. But when it comes to Muslims, you're a racist in your heart. Oh, I was so angry. I was so mad at her. And I said, well, I'll make a deal with you. When Jesus Christ himself appears at the foot of my bed and asks me to take that class, I'll take it. But I want to see his identification card to confirm that it's him. So I was being a smart butt, you know. And,
Yes.
you know, I really was. I found a lot of people were praying I would attend this class. And so my wife, you know, she kept gently persuading me. And so I ended up taking the class, and we had to do chat rooms. We had to do readings. We had to hear lectures. Well, it's about 70 of us. Halfway through the class, I realized, okay, I'm wrong about a lot of things about Islam. It's not a monolithic religion, no more than Christianity or Hinduism is monolithic. There's groups, there's different streams of thought. You know what I'm saying? It's much more diverse. In Islam, you got Sufi, you know, because you know a lot of Sunni, Shia, and in those groups you have Sufis, and then you have schools of thought that range, or wide range, and that do that. So I said, well, I've learned a lot, and I realize I'm wrong, and I don't think I hate them anymore as much. But this is as far as it goes. This class, and I'm done. Well, then one of the leaders of the class said, well, in order for you to get credit for this class, he said, you have to go make friends with a Muslim. You know what I mean? And attend one of their Dawah outreach presentation, which is kind of like whether you go to the mosque and you sit and listen to a presentation. So I was like, oh no, I would rather have a colonoscopy than do this. I said, oh God, what have I got myself into? So I struggled with that for several weeks, but I wanted to get my certificate for the class. You know, I put all this time in, you know, and I want a certificate for this, but I was here, you know, I'm not going to. So I was sitting in a Starbucks, you know, Starbucks coffee store, on Creedmoor Road in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the winter of 2005. And I was reading the class notes, and I was reading the manual and the writings. And you ever had something trouble you so badly you can't sleep? your stomach's upset. And I was like, and I looked at this stuff and I said, God, the gap between Muslims and Christians is so wide. You know, we just can't bring it. We can't bring it together. And I said, I'm a Southern boy. And I said, I'm the last person that should be doing anything about this. And so I was holding on to my cappuccino. I was making sure nobody was watching me. And I bowed my head real like this. And I said, okay, God, if you're calling me to build bridges of love between Muslims and Christians, you're going to have to give me a sign so clear I'll never, ever doubt it. Well, when I prayed, I felt relieved, because coming from a Baptist background, we don't believe in signs. I didn't expect anything to happen, you know. So I'm sitting there, and maybe a minute passed at the most. Also, I noticed there was a young boy standing next to my table. And I had, you know what highlighters are, like this, magic markers. I had a bunch of them out because when I read, I'll mark up everything and take notes. And kids would always come over wanting to borrow one or play with one. I thought nothing of it. But God knew the way to conquer my narcissism and prejudice would be through a child, because he knows I always have loved children. Yes. You know, I mean, the adult couldn't say it, but a child could do it. And this little boy came up to my table and he said, sir, I would like to borrow one of your magic markers. And he was so polite. And I said, remember, I just prayed for a sign. And I said, sure, you can borrow the blue one. He said, no, sir, I prefer the orange one. I thought, okay, he knows what he wants. I said, take the orange one. And then he didn't leave. He stood there and kept looking at me like he was thinking. And then all of a sudden, you know, the Starbucks tables are small round tables. He pulled a chair over on the other side of the table right in front of me. And he got on his knees. He was so little. And he put his elbows on the table. And he basically looked me straight in the eye and took off that lid off that orange highlighter. And he said, sir, by the way, my name is Omar, and I'm here to teach you some Arabic. Oh, wow. You know? And so I just was stunned. And then all of a sudden he rips out a piece of paper out of my notebook and he starts writing out the Arabic alphabet, and he's saying it real loud. And so I felt my knees get weak. I was like, what's happening here? You know? And it was like God was speaking to my soul and said, you did not think I could do this, did you? And so, and before I could get my thoughts together, he's writing out the Arabic alphabet. And I hear this woman yelling. She says, Omar, what are you doing? Please leave that poor man alone. And I looked and I said, no, ma'am, Omar can do whatever he wants to do. I'm like, okay, I'm having a spiritual awakening here and it's not comfortable, but I'm not going to close the door on this. And so Omar wrote out the Arabic alphabet. Now remember, he's 5. So he's not a calligrapher. Okay. So he said, now you write it. I looked under each of his letters and I thought I wrote them just like his. And he said, nope, it's all wrong. And he goes, it's all wrong. I'm going to have to come around this table and take your hand and guide you through the Arabic alphabet. Wow. So I would say the letter, we would write it, dot it out. And by the time we got to the end of the Arabic alphabet, I no longer hated Muslims.
Wow.
This awakening had happened inside me. I no longer hated Muslims. And it's like God had put his love in my heart. And I've never lost that love either. And I went over to his mother and I said, Omar is going to be a great teacher one day. And she goes, well, we're shocked by this. What do you mean? I said, Omar is an extremely shy child. He would never go up to a stranger and do this. Mm-hmm. We've been trying to figure out what made Omar get up from our table and come to you. Well, I knew, but I wasn't ready at that time to talk about it. So I left the store, looked up at the sky and said, God, I'm in. I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to be a peacemaker between Muslims, Christians, and other non-Muslims who will listen to the message. And so that began my journey. I've been doing it for 16 years. Yeah.
Wow. What a fascinating journey and story. And you ask for it, and you get it like within a minute, Amazing. Mm-hmm. Wow. What is peace to you, Pastor Jeffrey?
What's that?
What is peace to you?
How does it?
What is
Speech.
peace?
Oh, peace to you. Peace is not the absence of conflict. You know, you can have, there are peacekeepers in the world, and the moment you remove them, war breaks out again. I think peace is when the Jewish people came up with the concept of shalom, and it means peace on steroids. And it means, first of all, we have peace within ourselves. That's the one thing. We have to be, if we're not at peace with ourselves, if our shadow self, our ego, we're always jealous or angry or restless or feel constantly with anxiety and depression. And I've been there. I have been there many times. Then we're not at peace with ourselves. So we must make peace with ourselves. Once we do that, we can begin to make peace with others. We can begin to love and forgive and not hold resentments. You know what I mean? We got to let go. One of the keys is you got to let go of your resentments. You got to face your resentments, your involvement in those things. You got to face your fears and see them. That's the shadow self. And you got to face your character defects, you know, that's been created out of these beliefs that we've developed. So we make peace with ourselves. Then we can make peace with others. Then we make peace. We make peace with God. There's no set order on how this happens. You know, we come to the place that we realize we have a higher power. Some call it source, some call it God consciousness, some call it, you know, that there's a higher power that we really cannot change without this help from this higher power. If we do, we'll be doing everything in our own strength, and that's ego. You know, we'll be moving out of ego, and ego simply means edging God out. You know, edging God consciousness out to where we are our own voice. We're living in our heads. So once we make peace with God, then shalom means we make peace with our communities, within our communities, peace in economics. That means we say, okay, it's okay for people to make money, but it's got to be just, you know, a just economic system. That's peace. And the ancient Jews, Hebrews, God gave a rule that every 70 years, all debts would be paid. All debts had to be canceled. It's like a societal reset. Can you imagine if we did that in our world every 70 to 100 years, all debts were canceled? I mean, you know, can you imagine what it's
Wow.
like? You know, God cared so much for the common good and the humanity that he knew that there comes a point that things have to be reset in balance. And that's a lot of struggle. And then the other is peace with the environment. You know, we need to make peace with our environment. What that means is being out in it, connecting with it, protecting it, honoring it. I love to get in the ocean. I can walk to the ocean from my house, and I'm an avid bodyboarder, excuse me. So I'll surf all year round in the winter, and I have to wear a wetsuit. And when I get out in that water, I connect with nature. I feel one. I don't know when the wave begins and I end sometimes. And sometimes I've lost track of time. It's like I go in this other world. And I believe in those moments, my God consciousness is raised because we go into an alpha state in our mind, you know, is raised. And I'm able to receive from God information. You know, it's like prayer. It becomes a form of prayer for me. And I'm able to go out and solve problems. I'm able to go out and he'll give me a new idea about peace, my peace work. And so peace is really holistic. It's personal. It's communal. It's with the divine. It's with economics. It's with the environment. And one problem we have is, I think in our country, we have nothing wrong with being wealthy. But sometimes I think there's a thing where you can be too wealthy at the expense of, if you're getting a $200 million bonus as a CEO and you don't want to pay your workers $15 an hour, that's bad karma, man. Or we call it sin or whatever. I mean, that's not how I believe that God and the divine wants us to live. And so I think that this is where business does not work if we do not follow the rule, love your neighbors yourself, and treat other people the way you want to be treated. If I were getting a $200 billion bonus and my employees were struggling, maybe I'd just keep 40 million, excuse me, and give the rest. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But that's greed. That comes from ego and shadow self. And so, yeah.
Okay, God gives you 40 million. What would you do with 40 millions?
Oh my goodness, I have no idea. I have no idea. Well, one thing I would really want to do is, we can't take our money with us. Do you know what I'm saying? I would take care of my family,
Yeah.
and I love the travel. I love the travel. I love to help people, and I would probably give the overwhelming majority of it to special groups, that I would love to donate to, and give back, because you can't take it with. I mean, even if you just live on a few million, you could still give so much, you know. And so we're in a culture now that I think globally that um, and I think when people are that wealthy, then they don't care about the workers. They don't have inner peace. They don't have inner peace. They feel like there's not enough. I got to have more. I got to have more. It's ego. Ego. Something in them is driving them. And same with environment. When people can just destroy the environment for profit, and the drive species into extinction, that's not peace. What you're doing, you're working, because really this planet is a living organism. The ocean is a living organism. Our bodies, we're two people, but we're made up of trillions of bacteria that make this body work. You know what I'm saying? They're good bacteria. And we don't realize that's how the world is. That's how we are. And what happens to you happens, it's like the butterfly effect. It affects somebody else, what we do, our daily decisions create something in the spirit world that impacts others. And so, so that's kind of a long version of peace.
But much needed, and very well explained. Appreciate Pastor Jeff. What are the causes between conflict between Islam and Christianity, and what are the solutions? How can you bridge between Christianity and Islam?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because let's start with the conflicts. It's interesting when you look at our history. Let's start off with Christians first. When we look at our history, Jesus told us to do no harm. It's very clear. Jesus practiced nonviolence. There is no doubt in this world. In what we call the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, he talks about don't judge and you'll be not judged. You know what I mean? And he talks about blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called the children of God. Blessed are they who are spiritually bankrupt, for they shall receive mercy. Being spiritually bankrupt means, oh my goodness, I've awakened. I see myself. I'm bankrupt. I may have money, but in my soul, I'm bankrupt. And God said, when you come to that place, you're ready for a spiritual journey. He said, blessed are the pure in heart, those whose God consciousness is growing. And in that growing, it's changing their values and changing them. He said, they'll see God. and others will see God in them, and he said a lot of things like that. And he said, but the greatest of all of these is to love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. Like I said, that's the core message. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. And if you find enemies along the way, make them your friends. Well, there's been a lot of conflict over the ages between Muslims and Christians, especially, I think the Crusades had a lot to do with this, because before the Crusades, Islam saw Christians really as we are a continuation of the same story. Do you know what I'm saying? And there wasn't a challenge. They didn't believe the Bible was corrupt. They didn't believe there was a lot of those beliefs developed after the Crusades. If you go back and look at it, so the whole thing was some Muslim leaders and scholars got mad and said Christians love the cross, therefore we hate it. It's an evil symbol. Christians love their books, therefore we'll say the book's corrupted, even though the Quran doesn't say that. So it was a cause and effect conflict. There's always a coming. So the causes are, it's very interesting. As you begin to look at them, they have very little to do with our scriptures. Very little. They have to do on both sides with traditions. I think one of the popes said, if you go to a nation that's not Christian, by meant European, you can conquer and enslave them. You know what I'm saying? So Jesus would never say that. We don't have that. That's tradition, you know. Then there's traditions in Islam. So what I love to do, I have a friend who's my name Jeffrey Hayes. He's written a book called Back to the Books, and it really is an awesome book on what we have in common. So one of the first things is I would say to Muslims or others, start with Muslims. I say, and they say, well, we don't have anything to do with Christians. Not all Muslims are like this, but there's some. We don't have anything to do with, with Christians. Okay. And a friend of mine heard me teach one time, and he didn't like the stuff I was saying, but he went to a nation in Africa to do humanitarian work for to dig wells for a Christian organization. He didn't believe in anything I said. And he said he came to one big village, and the elder met the sheikh or elder met him and said, don't come in. We need this, but we don't want it from Christians. And he said, how did he put it? He said to him, we have nothing in common. And my friend said, I didn't know what to say. So I thought about one of your lectures, and you said, well, do you believe that Isa is the word of God and the spirit of God? And the sheikh said, yes. And he said, so do we. Do you believe he was born of miraculous birth, virgin birth? And the sheikh said, yes. Do you believe he is a predestined mercy? Do you believe, that he's healed the sick and raised the dead and brought the good news? Went on and on. Finally, the sheikh said, whoa. Okay, you can come in. I say we have a lot in common. And so what I try to do, the conflict, but so when I will meet, maybe I'll be honest with you, I've not met a lot of hostile Muslims towards what I say. I've not met many. Just maybe a couple, or 2 or 3, maybe, but most messages, I don't care what flavor of Islam it is, they don't see me as a threat. In fact, everything I say comes from their books. And so what I say to a lot of Muslims, I'll say this, and they'll start saying, well, we have this belief, and you have to become I said, what does Islam mean? Submitting to God. Okay. And I'll say, well, how do we submit to God? We would get in discussions. I said, even in your hadith, in your scriptures, it sounds like in the Common Word Initiative, which was 138 Muslim scholars that met in Jordan in 2007, they all said we can build friendships with Muslims based on 3 things from our holy books. There's one God, and we must love him with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And I said, do you believe that? Yes, I believe that. It's okay. Let us begin our journey there. We can talk about our differences, and we can talk about common. I was in Sydney, Australia, teaching. And this Christian pastor was so mad at me. And he says, Muslims are all terrorists. You can't trust any of them. They're terrorists. They're evil. And see, that's part of the problem. We believe they're intrinsically evil. I don't, but there's a view, of that often. And I said, he was just all mad at me. And I said, well, does the Bible say the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor? And he says, yes. Are Muslims your neighbors? He goes, And I said, let's go further. Didn't Jesus say in the Sermon on the Mount, if you have an enemy, you're to love them, to be kind to them? He goes, yes. He goes, but. I said, no buts. If you say but, what you're saying is the words of Jesus have no power and authority in your life. Something else does, whether it's culture, that's driving you. So I've had to deconstruct people. So the conflicts are often around tradition. What I try to do is to say, okay, let's not throw out our traditions. Let's not throw them out. They're important. But let's just take our books, like Jeffrey Hayes says. And when we just go to our books for dialogue and discussion, it's like this. That's how close it becomes. It's phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. And I've seen this so many times. And so solutions, that's the solution. Let's get back to our scriptures and dialogue from there, begin that space. And then we start saying, well, we will agree on this. We just don't use that term. And the other thing is I've created in my model, my message is love God, love neighbor, and love your enemy. But I've created in the model that I produced in the Peace Path book, I say there's 4 practices that we must, a mission or even sacred readings don't have much meaning unless you put teeth into them, action into them. So what I would train people to do, both Muslims and Christians, I would train them, say the first practice is become good friends without a hook. I'm becoming a friend with this Muslim to convert them. I'm a friend with this Christian to convert them. Now, I know that's normal, especially with where they're both kind of missional faiths, but so you got to lay that aside. You know, you got to become good friends without a hook. Then you eat together. Okay. You know, you eat together. And there's something, let me tell you something. I've often said most of the world's problems could be solved over a meal. If people sat down and learned each other, spent time, listened, really listened and said, okay, I hear you, where you're coming from. I see. If America could just say, oh, I see the problem I've caused in this situation. I own that. So, okay, we're going to say, I see that, and we want to change that. And then, you know, so eat together. As we can eat together, I believe most problems could be solved that way. And many do. A lot of tribal violence is solved that way. A lot of, I mean, it's unbelievable some of the things that, the ways that problems are solved. And so you become good friends, you eat together. And as we eat together, I tell them we're not friends until our children are playing together. You know what I mean? Our families, really, because what we're saying is we, in the end, if you base this on what the Islamic view is, in the end, the Islamic view basically says the Quran is not to replace the Bible. It's a confirmer of the former scriptures. You know what I'm saying? It's the protector of the former scriptures. So the Quran is, in essence, claiming we're not breaking away. We are the end of the collection. You know what I'm saying? It says we honor the books, the prophets, all that. And so, so we eat together. And as we're eating together, we start trusting each other, friends. Yeah. Then there's questions you can ask we couldn't have asked a year before, you know, without it leading to fight. Then the third action is to explore faith together as friends. That means not polemics. You're not there to tear down Islam. You're not there to but explore faith and ask each other questions. And I always say, let the Muslims teach you, and then you teach them about, not to convert, but to ask, because we both have, like I did about Islam in 2009, preconceived ideas. You know, Christians go to another Christian to learn Islam. That's dumb. You know what I mean? Muslims run to another Muslim to learn about Christianity. And there's going to be a lot of bias in that. And then the fourth action step is, as you become friends, eat together, and you explore your faith together, you're becoming like a community. You really are. That's the goal. Then you go do a service project together in your community for the common good. Prophet Muhammad, peace be to him, said in the covenants, a lot of Muslims have not read the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, they are the exact opposite of the ISIS and Taliban ideology. They really are. The covenant said if a Christian comes to you and needs you to help him build his church, to build it. Don't force Christian women to become your wives. You know what I mean? And he says, if a Christian needs help, give them money. You know, build their church. He didn't tell them to tear down churches. He told them to help them. And then he made 6 statements. He says it over and over in the covenants. He says, what's good for the Christian is good for the Muslim. That's common. And what's good for the Muslim is good for the Christian. So the conflicts have arisen because we have forgotten those things from Jesus, our script, and from the covenants of the Prophet Muhammad. Do you see what I'm saying? And we have forgotten that at the end, to have a spiritual awakening, we have to love one another. Yeah. We have to put ourselves in each other's shoes. We have to walk together. I walk with a lot of different people. You know what I mean? I walk, and I'm a committed follower of Jesus, and I walk with a lot of different people. And in the end, I have atheists who say, I'm not ready for God, but I believe you should love your neighbors yourself and truly. I said, good, come on. Let's walk. Let Jesus say, sure, come on, come and see what this takes you, you know. And so it's taken me wonderful places. Next year, I'll be traveling to 14 nations for 40 days for a peace tour. And we're going to start from India and go all the way to South Africa. And I'm very excited about this. If everything works out, I'm, you know, with COVID and everything. But yeah, so those are the 4 practices, and there's the core message. And I just try to live it over. There's so much. Yeah, sure. There's libraries of theological reflection, and they're not bad. But in the end, the message of Jesus was quite simple, you know, so I'm going to focus on love, and I'm going to focus on developing community with the other, and I'll have my hands full. And then when I meet God, I'll ask him one day, inshallah. And when I meet God, if I still have questions about all this other stuff, I'll ask him. But I have a feeling that when that day comes, we're going to say, never mind about the questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pastor Jeffrey, thank you so much for sharing your heart, and keep doing what you are doing, you know, building the bridges between Christianity as well as Islam, as well as other religions, you know, and world needs you. You know, world is beautiful place just because of having pastor like you. And I love simple concepts, but like, you know, I love like, okay, let's talk what the common in us, you know, let's break the bread, you know, and let's have our children's play, let's have talk, you know, and then like simple small steps, but you know, those small steps got together, you know, and amazing movement happens.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
So would you please share your YouTube as well as the information about your ebook, how my celebrity
Yes.
has
I have a YouTube channel, and I guess if you type in Jeff Burns, I Follow the Path, Jeff Burns, I Follow the Path, you'll find it. I have a I Follow the Path Facebook page. You can download it from there. Simple book, very simple book that goes in more detail. And I actually have a longer version. I've already written it. I just need to edit it and get it published. It goes into much detail about what this looks like. And so, yes, by all means, my YouTube channel, Jeff Burns, I Follow the Path, and has my stories on it, and it has other videos about my encounters, my journey with Muslims. And I'm getting I took a break because I was ill for a while. So now I'm getting ready to start back again, and I'm going to be telling about 30 stories of my journeys with Muslims. And then I'm going to be doing a weekly reading with my daughter from the Quran and the Bible, where they talk about on the same subject. And eventually I'm going to do a story on the prophets. I'm going to do a series on the Prophet Muhammad, peace be to him, called The Beautiful Life. I'm just going to tell his story, and I'm researching this a lot. And then I'm going to do a whole story on Jesus, or Isa al-Masih, you know, and because I think all the prophets are important, you know what I'm saying? And so I want to, and it's helped a lot of Muslims. They've told me, and I just love Muslims. I really do. I just love Muslims. It's a funny story. I'll tell you this and I'll be quiet. But my daughter, she sees how much I love Muslims. She was little. Now she's 14. And when she was little, I was going to Chicago to speak to at a mosque, and I was the keynote speaker. And the Grand Mufti of Bosnia was also a keynote speaker. And we were at the airport in Raleigh getting ready to get on the plane. And my daughter said, "Okay, Dad," she's 5 years old. No, 4. She goes, "Let's get on this plane and go to Chicago and meet some Muslims." Oh, I meant to also, I have a blog too called jeffburns.org if people are interested. And I'm starting back on my blog. I took a break, but I'm starting back. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeff, the Pastor Jeff, the Building Bridges Pastor, for sharing your heart, you know, and keep doing what you're doing. Believe in your wildest dreams. Don't let anybody steal your dreams. Just do
thank
it
you.
now. You're welcome. If
Thank you.
Trump can win, so can you. If Trump can lose, so can you.
Yes, right. Oh, yeah.
Life,
That's right.
you
That's
are the
right.
celebrity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure.